Harry's Wife, part 97.20. Wired for Sound. Why? Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Following the Platinum Jubilee weekend and during it, there was considerable speculation about whether Harry's wife was wired for sound. Some people form this view quite simply because it's her and she's not to be trusted, viewed as a conniving, underhand narcissist that would do anything so long as it promotes her own interests. There are others that believe that the pressure that's being faced by Netflix means that she would be so underhand as to go around recording people in order to try and get her hands on that material to bolster the docu-series that is rumoured to be in hand. Others have preferred a more evidential approach, looking at the fact that Harry was staring at her chest and he wasn't admiring her boobs, but also the fact that he pointed out something at her collar which caused her to fiddle with it, that there appeared to be something underneath when viewed in the middle section between the two collar pieces, that there was speculation about the rather unusual chest area on her outfit, the supposed third nipple, the fact that Harry appeared to have something in his left pocket when seen walking down the steps, and of course the storm flap on her attire, which might hide a battery pack. There was no clear evidence, of course, that showed that she was definitely wired for sound. Of course, one would perhaps need X-ray vision or a sudden wardrobe malfunction to reveal that, but there are many people who believe that those instances that I've just described, when viewed in aggregate, support this, along with the fact that it's her and the way that she behaves mean that she would stoop so low as to behave in such a fashion. There are others who claim to have received information from certain agencies and authorities to confirm that that was the case. There's been speculation that the former head of MI5 was sat behind with jamming equipment. It all gets very James Bond, doesn't it? The fact is, we don't know for certain whether she was wired for sound, and it is indeed speculation. Of course, there is evidence which has a ring of credibility about it, and therefore it behooves me to address the various questions that people have been sending in my direction as to, not was she wired for sound, I'll let you make your own minds up about that. That's not my role here as somebody that talks about narcissism, but rather to explain if she was wired for sound, why would she do it? Take, for example, an empathic person. As I've explained, that an empathic person is somebody that has emotional empathy for a wide range of individuals and has empathic traits ranging anywhere from moderate to extremely strong. Sitting alongside that are narcissistic traits, which could range from anything from extremely low up to very strong. The empathic person ordinarily would not go around wired for sound. Their empathic traits of decency, honesty, compassion, strong moral compass would mean it wouldn't even cross their minds to become wired up. They wouldn't think to themselves, I need to record some snippets of conversation for use against or in relation to these people, either for my own purposes to make money from it, or perhaps even to hold against these individuals should I catch them saying something which I could interpret in my favour. An empathic person just would not go there. Their unconscious emotional empathy wouldn't allow such thoughts to surface. However, that's not to say that an empathic person would never be wired up or engage in some kind of subterfuge. They might do so where there's an external stressor. A common one would be, for instance, where they were trying to record evidence of their abuser abusing them, their abuser making certain admissions. The external stressor, which is the abuse, causes their emotional empathy to be reduced for that particular person, and therefore it becomes, in effect, acceptable to record them in this underhand fashion. A normal person ordinarily might go about recording other people quite simply because they're outside of their circle of emotional empathy, but they wouldn't do it randomly. They would have to have some justifying factor behind it. When it comes to them recording people who were within their circle of empathy, for instance their own family, the position would be similar to that of an empathic person. There would need to be an external stressor driving down their emotional empathy to cause them to engage in this underhand conduct. A narcissistic person would have little hesitation in undertaking such action. They would do it in a self-seeking manner. Again, perhaps because they deem that they need the information or that they need the money, and they don't see anything particularly problematic in undertaking it. They know that it would be viewed as wrong by other people, but on this occasion they deem that it would be appropriate. Again, however, they wouldn't be driven by such things as the need for fuel and control, because remember, they're narcissistic but not a narcissist. They would be driven by simple self-interest, such as the need for money, or in order to perhaps get a conviction against somebody based upon their behaviour that was problematic towards that narcissistic individual. But when it comes to Harry's wife, what's going through her mind and what's actually causing her to behave in the way that she is? Well, she doesn't think to herself, oh, I'm a narcissist, I need to do this to control people, to draw fuel, to obtain character traits and residual benefits, because she's unaware of what she is. In her mind, it's acceptable for two reasons. First of all, that she deems it appropriate because there is a series that needs to be made and she needs material for it and needs must. Secondly, it may well be the case that she's expecting that somebody may say something adverse to her or about her, so that she can then use that against them at a later juncture by saying, see? Told you, they were all a bunch of bigoted racists. So in her mind, she would believe that it's justified. And most likely, the overriding reason why she did it in her mind was it was necessary to gain some footage, some sound recordings, for the purpose of the docuseries with Netflix. It doesn't cross her mind that she should not be doing this. It does not cross her mind that this might be offensive to people, that it's underhand, that it's dishonest. She's not governed by such considerations. Of course, she doesn't blatantly run around with a recording device because her style of narcissism is such where it recognizes that it could be a problem. Remember, the narcissism recognizes this, that it could be a problem, and therefore causes her to operate with these covert behaviors. An analogy would be, for instance, the lesser narcissist having an affair. He doesn't care that his girlfriend finds out. It doesn't bother him that the neighbours know what he's up to. He just does it because, driven by his narcissism and the lack of a facade and a veneer, he does it because, why not? I want to shag the next-door neighbour. Of course, he's driven by the need for fuel and control, but he doesn't care about the fact that people know what he's up to. Sod them. It's not a consideration when he's getting balls deep. But when it comes to a mid-range narcissist engaging in an affair, the narcissism wants to ensure that there is no threat to control posed by people saying, hey, you're having an affair, and therefore causes him to function in a more underhand, more camouflaged, nuanced fashion. And that's the difference. The lesser narcissism doesn't care, in effect, for appearances. The mid-range narcissist does. And it's similar here for Harry's wife as a mid-range narcissist, that her narcissism recognizes that it would not be very sensible to go around with a microphone, thrusting the people of faces, or carrying her phone showing that it was recording. That would immediately cause a problem for control, and her narcissism is a little more nuanced than that. Instead, it causes her to believe that it's perfectly acceptable, should she have done this, to record in an underhand fashion to ensure that the material was available. In her head, the narcissism causes her to believe that this course of action is entirely appropriate, justified, and therefore she should do it. And thus, the narcissism, as ever, causes her to think in a particular way and feel in a particular way, so that she's motivated to take these steps for the purposes of, as always, the prime aims. She's actually doing it, although she doesn't realize, to assert control. To assert control over the people that she's talking to assert control over Netflix by providing them with material that is needed, to assert control over potential viewers of all of this material or listeners. She's doing it to draw fuel, because ultimately there will come a reaction to this material at some juncture. She's doing it primarily for the purposes of asserting control and, of course, the residual benefit of the money that has been received and should want to be received in the future in relation to the creation of material. So her narcissism effectively sits there and determines, we need to assert control, we need to do something about the threat to control that's posed by the fact that we haven't yet delivered for Netflix, and therefore we are going to drive this narcissist to engage in the recording of material in order to satisfy that need for control, to nullify the threat to control that's posed by having not provided anything so far, and to cater to the residual benefit of getting one's sticky mitts on some spondoolix. And that's why it's done. It isn't the case that she's planning ahead to think to herself, I'm going to get some excellent juicy material and then I'm going to rain down hell upon everybody, but rather it's used in the moment for the purposes of a nullification of a threat to control, so that if somebody were to say something to her which was unpleasant, she would know that it was being recorded, and therefore, should the need arise, she knows that it could be used, but that knowledge of use isn't about the future. That knowledge of use is in the now. She would know that that person has said something and she's got it recorded, which would give her that unconscious sense of control in that moment. Of course, at a later juncture, in order to assert control over the relevant person, her narcissism would look in the box of tricks and think, what have we got that we can say assert control over this particular member of the royal family? 6 weeks ago, she recorded a conversation where this person said some rather unsavory things. Let's bring that back up, bringing up the past. And therefore, the fact that her narcissism drives her to control matters in the moment by recording also has that collateral benefit for her that at a later juncture, it could be brought up again, bringing up the past, for the purpose of assertion control at that future present point. As always, everything that she does when it comes to another person, or the contemplation of involvement with another person, or the omission of interaction with another person, is driven by the need for the prime aims. But she doesn't know it. The narcissism makes her believe that she's justified in undertaking the recording, if that's what she was actually doing, for the purposes of attending to the Netflix material, and quite simply doesn't bother her with any concerns about it being morally reprehensible, dishonest, or underhand. That doesn't cross her mind. Why? Her mind doesn't work that way. Her narcissism is not going to burden her with a conscience, and therefore she doesn't struggle with the question of, should I be doing this? If, for example, somebody noticed what she was up to and said, should you be doing that? Then she does not self-reflect and think to herself, oh no, I shouldn't, I'm ever so sorry, I'll stop. The narcissism will give her a reason to justify the behaviour, and the level of plausibility about that justification varies from narcissist to narcissist. For her, it would probably be the case of taking a victim approach, namely, I've had some awful things said about me and nobody believed me, so this time I'm making sure that if anybody says anything, I have a recording of it. My truth must out. I must control the narrative. And therefore, if she was threatened in that moment by somebody accusing her of recording, her narcissism would cause her to respond in that way to nullify that threat to control, and she would still go ahead with it because of her rampant sense of entitlement, absence of accountability, and absence of emotional empathy. The reason why she records this material, if that's what happened, is of course for the purpose of the prime aims, but she does not know that. Her narcissism tells her it's for some other reason. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.